Hey, Olive, Arlo, and Frank. Grandpa coming to you from the living room in Jacksonville Beach, Florida. And we're going to continue on in the book of Exodus. Today, we're going to look at Moses going back up the mountain and getting a second set of the Ten Commandments. But there'll be so much more than that. Very exciting chapter. So let's get started. The Lord said to Moses, "Cut out 2 tablets of stone like the first, and I will write on the tablets the words that were on the first tablets, which you smashed." And if you remember, he came back down. The children of Israel had convinced his brother Aaron to build, to make gold images to worship, Egyptian images. And Moses smashed the 10 Commandments. But now God's saying, okay, well, let's try this again. Let's see what happens. And God always knows what the outcome's going to be. He knew the outcome that was going to happen the first time, so he knows the outcome that's going to happen here. But this is for us. The Lord said to Moses, "Cut out 2 tablets of stone like the first, and I will write on the tablets the words that were on the first tablets, which you smashed. Be prepared in the morning, and go up in the morning to Mount Sinai, and station yourself for me there on the top of the mountain. No one is to come up with you. Do not let anyone be seen anywhere on the mountain. Not even the flocks or the herds may graze in front of that mountain." So there were times when I think it was Joshua would be halfway up the mountain waiting for Moses. I could be wrong about that, but I could be right. And then the people were down there going like, "Oh, what's going to happen this time?" He wants the people and even the livestock to not even be at the base of the mountain. This is just you and me, Mo. Mo, you're going to have some personal God time. And let's see what happens with this, because it's pretty fantastic. So Moses cut out 2 tablets of stone like the first. Early in the morning he went up to Mount Sinai, just as the Lord had commanded him, and he took in his hand the 2 tablets of stone. So not only is this dude like walking up this mountain and back down and up and back down, but now the second time he's walked up there with tablets of stone. Like these are, they have to be at least like 20 pounds each. The Lord descended in the cloud and stood with him there and proclaimed the Lord by name. That's a very interesting way to word this. It says the Lord descended in the cloud and proclaimed the Lord by name. Doesn't say he proclaimed himself by name. This is probably a pre-incarnation, if you want to call it that, of Jesus. The Lord, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger and abounding in loyal love and faithfulness, keeping loyal love for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin. But he by no means leaves the guilty unpunished, responding to the transgression of fathers by dealing with children and children's children to the third and fourth generation. There's a lot to unpack there. And we could spend hours and hours and hours and never get to the bottom of the unpacking. But we don't always understand what God is doing because we can't relate to anything about him. He's that much above us. We want to always bring him down to our level and go, yeah, but God's not fair because he's not doing this. And, you know, if God was a God of compassion, how come he even allows people to sin? We don't know. But what do we know? That he wrote a book about himself, and we're reading it right now. So that's what you need to do, is you need to just read these passages over and over again and pray about them and ask him to open them for you and show you what he's trying to tell you. Moses quickly bowed to the ground and worshipped and said, "If now I have found favor in your sight, O Lord, let my Lord go among us, for we are a stiff-necked people." And stiff-necked means they're stubborn, and they certainly were stubborn. "Pardon our iniquity and our sins, and take us for your inheritance." Now they're already God's inheritance. But Moses is pleading for them because that's his heart. That's why he was chosen, because he had a heart for his people. Remember back when they were in Egypt and he like killed a guy, an Egyptian, because of what he was doing to an Israelite. He said, "See, I am going to make a covenant before all your people. I will do wonders such as have not been done in all the earth, nor in any nation. All the people among whom you live will see the work of the Lord, for it is a fearful thing that I am going to do, that I am doing with you." So they should be in awe of this. "Obey what I am commanding you this day. I am going to drive out before you the Amorite, the Canaanite, the Hittite, the Perizzite, the Hivite, the Jebusite, and the Uptite and Outacite. Be careful not to make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land where you are going, lest it become a snare among you." And we're going to find out that they get tricked by this group of people. I forget who they are. And those people say they're not from that area, but they actually are. They pretend like that they came a long distance. And the Israelites go, "Yeah, okay, you can live among us," and they become a snare, just like God said. "Rather, you must destroy their altars, smash their images, and cut down their Asherah poles." And Asherah poles were something that they used to worship these horrible gods who demanded of them that they sacrifice their children and stuff. And, you know, a lot of people say, well, these gods aren't real at all. But I believe at some level that they are real, that they're demonic. Because who would want you to sacrifice your newborn baby to them? Well, Satan. "For you must not worship any other God, for the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God." So his name is jealous. And let's see what this says here. You're not going to be able to see it, but oh, it's just the way they use the word name. But they use the word name and then the word jealous, and it hooks those two up. So he's saying that his name is jealous, but it's not really that, but it becomes that in the ancient Hebrew. is a jealous God. Be careful not to make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land, for when they prostitute themselves to their gods and sacrifice to their gods, and someone invites you, you will eat from his sacrifice. And you then take his daughters for your sons, and when his daughters prostitute themselves to their gods, they will make your sons prostitute themselves to their gods as well. You must not make yourself molten gods. So he's saying, if you go there and you assimilate with the people who are already there, you're going to become like them. And what's the worst thing that you did really recently that would show that I think that you're going to become like them? You made molten images. You made golden gods to worship. Because these people have their own set of gods, just like the Egyptians had their own set of gods, but they're just as evil and they're just as false. You must keep the feast of unleavened bread, so this goes back to the Passover, the first Passover when they left. The Passover is just one day, but the Passover season is 8 days, and part of that is the feast of unleavened bread. You must keep the feast of unleavened bread. For 7 days you must eat bread made without yeast, as I commanded you to do this at the appointed time of the month Abib, for in the month of Abib you came out of Egypt. This is to commemorate coming out of Egypt, just like the Passover itself is. Every firstborn of the womb belongs to me, even every firstborn of your cattle that is a male, whether ox or sheep. So they say cattle, and we think of cattle as just bulls and cows, but they're talking about livestock. And so they had sheep, they had bulls and cows, they also had goats, and they're clean animals. But it says, now the firstling of a donkey you may redeem with a lamb. But if you do not redeem it, then break its neck. You must redeem all the firstborn of your sons. So you have to redeem every animal, the clean animals, by sacrificing that animal. But the animals that aren't clean, like a donkey, it's not like the Jewish people back then were eating donkeys. That what you would do with them is you would redeem them using a sheep. And if you don't have a sheep, well, just kill it. It's weird for us to think about today, but this was a different time. No one will appear before me empty-handed. And we see when Jesus is born, his parents take, I think it's 2 doves or something like that, because they're poor people. And they redeem him in the temple in Jerusalem. On 6 days you may labor, but on the 7th day you must rest. Even at the time of plowing and of harvest, you are to rest. So that we're talking about the Sabbath. So now he's kind of going through the 10 Commandments with them and saying, this is what all this stuff is about. I'm giving you these 10 words. That's what it really is in Hebrew, the 10 words. And each one of those words means something for the whole part of the law. You know, thou shalt not steal is the word steal. You know, murder, that kind of thing. On 6 days you may labor, but on the 7th day you must rest. Even at the time of plowing and of harvest, you are to rest. You must observe the Feast of Weeks, the first fruits of the harvest of wheat, and the first of ingathering at the end of the year. So there's several of these throughout the year that the Israelites were compelled to celebrate, and a few of them they had to actually go to Jerusalem and celebrate it. And the Feast of Weeks is one of them. I think that weeks might be the Pentecost in Christianity, what we call the Day of Pentecost. I think that was like at the end of the Feast of Weeks. The first fruits of harvest of wheat and the feasts of ingathering at the end of the year. So these are all, and I think that one is Shavuot, however you say it, which is the Feast of Booths. At 3 times, and so he's going to talk about it, these 3 times a year, all your men must appear before the sovereign Lord, the God of Israel. So it was a little bit easier during this time because they're all out in the desert, in the wilderness, wandering. So they're all right there. They can just walk over there and appear before the Lord. But when they get to the promised land, then they settle that whole area. They have to get to Jerusalem 3 times a year. And Jesus did that. As far as we know, he did that every time. And even though we can't prove that he did it every time for the 33 or so years that he was there, it's the kind of thing he would do. He would keep the law because he said, I didn't come to overturn the law. I came to fulfill it. And here we're talking about the law. The God of Israel, for I will drive out the nations before you and enlarge your borders. No one will covet your land when you go up to appear before the Lord your God 3 times in a year. So he's saying, I'm telling you to do these things. That's your part of the covenant. But my part of the covenant is, don't worry when every man in this area leaves his farm, his family, and goes to Jerusalem to appear before the Lord, to worship the Lord, because I'm going to keep all your enemies from coming in and taking your stuff and your loved ones while you're gone. You must not offer the blood of any sacrifice with yeast. The sacrifice from the feast of Passover must not remain until the following morning. So there's all these little laws that you have to follow. If you ate that meat the following morning, boom, you're done. You have leavened bread instead of unleavened bread, you're out of here. Dead on arrival. The first of the first fruits of your soil you must bring to the house of the Lord your God. You must not cook a young goat in its mother's milk. And that's something that, like in modern Judaism, devout Jewish people, they won't eat eggs and butter at the same time. And they go back to this. You wouldn't be able to have an egg and a chicken at the same time. It's just, people get hung up on the religious aspects of it. What I want you to do is just read it. See what it says. Study it. Question it. Pray about it. The Lord said to Moses, write down these words, for in accordance with these words, I have made a covenant with you and with Israel. So he was there with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights. Hey, 40 days and 40 nights. Noah in the flood. The whole flood was 120 days, but I think it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. Jesus in the wilderness, fasting and being tempted by Satan, 40 days and 40 nights. And Moses. And I think there were other things too. I forget if Elijah had I know he flees to a mountain and there's ravens or some kind of birds that feed him and all this kind of stuff. But I don't know if that was a 40-day, 40-night thing. So he was there with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights, and he did not eat bread and he did not drink water. So Moses, just like Jesus, is fasting and seeking God. He wrote on the tablets the words of the covenant, the 10 Commandments. Let's see what the 10 words, and it says that the word commandment is traditional, but in Hebrew it means the 10 words. So let's see what this is all about, the radiant face of Moses. Now when Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the 2 tablets of the testimony in his hand, when he came down from the mountain, Moses did not know that the skin of his face shone while he talked with him. So this is pretty interesting. The first time he came down, the Israelites were gone nuts. They were dancing before these images, these molten golden calves, false idols. They were going nuts. Woohoo! Moses came down and went, I had enough of you people. Bam, bam. Broke the tablets. Now he's coming down and his face is glowing. When Aaron and all the Israelites saw Moses, the skin of his face shone, and they were afraid to approach him. But Moses called to them, so Aaron and all the leaders of the community came back to him, and Moses spoke to them. After this, all the Israelites approached, and he commanded them all that the Lord had spoken to him on Mount Sinai. So at first I was reading that as he commanded them all, but he commanded them, those people, all that the Lord had spoken to him on Mount Sinai. When Moses finished speaking with them, he would put a veil on his face. But when Moses went in before the Lord to speak with him, he would remove the veil until he came out. Then he would come out and tell the Israelites what he had been commanded. When the Israelites would see the face of Moses, that the skin of Moses' face shone, Moses would put the veil on his face again until he went in to speak with the Lord. So this is another really deep story. And this isn't about telling you exactly what this means. This is about you piquing your interest to figure out what this is about, what God's trying to tell you. Some of your relatives probably wear a veil. I know I've met, I think all your aunts, but one of them, Sada, I've met and talked to her several times. and she wears like a headdressing, and I never talked to her about whether she ever wears a veil, but it's traditional in some parts of Islam. And you're from an Egyptian family, so you probably, I guarantee you have relatives who abide by that tradition. But just another fascinating story. We'll see where we go from here. It says we're going to the Sabbath regulations, so we know that you're to take a Sabbath. This seventh day is a day of rest, but we're going to see that it's even more than that. There's other Sabbaths. And in your life, you should think about Sabbaths and think about keeping Sabbaths. Peace out.